and welcome back to Afterglow, episode 23. We wrapped up in the previous couple weeks, finally, a couple of games I did not care much for. This podcast is about recording, my memories with video games and hopefully get you to think about the games that you played. And one big thing is that not all the games are always going to be good. But we're going to fix that with this episode because we're going to talk about one of my favorite franchises, Final Fantasy. The original that I played way back when on the NES. And for the most part, I really like almost every game in this franchise. Now, the later games I don't care as much for as the earlier ones. Like, to me, the Pixel Remaster was like the perfect setup. Like, all 6 of those games were really good, and the remasters I think they did really well on. I am bummed that they left out some of the bonus content that they had kind of put back in, but we're going to go back to Final Fantasy 1 on this one. I hope you enjoy all my memories of this game, which I'll be sharing with you after the music break. Alright, and welcome back. Now, as a preemptive of this one, you might want to listen to my episode on Dragon Warrior, but Dragon Warrior is what really got me started into that turn-based style role-playing game. And I really enjoyed that one, but the one that got me even more addicted easily had to be Final Fantasy. And this is another one of those games I just randomly rented one day. Back then, you want to talk about a weird game to rent, it would have to be Final Fantasy, because the game only has, I believe, one save slot. And there is no way that you're beating this game, like, on a one-night rental or over the weekend even. There's no way. That being said, I tore into this game during the time period that I rented it. I thought it was a blast. But I went through the first town, figured out how to equip weapons and armor, and I don't even know how I figured out how to do that, because I was pretty young whenever I rented this game. We gotta be talking like 7 or 8. But I figured out how equipping certain things increased certain stats. I figured out how to buy magic. Went up to the Northern Shrine, beat Garland, got the bridge done, hiked across the continent to the next town, and got my rear end handed to me by the pirates. And that's as far as I made it the first time I rented this game. So I had to rent it again, right? So I rented it again, and of course I had to start over. But I had the weekend. I managed to get past the pirates finally. Sleep spell is amazing for that one encounter. Grinded up some more gold, upgraded my equipment, crossed the sea to the elf town, and made it to the marsh cave, and that was like a brick wall for me. I could not grind enough over a weekend to get through the marsh cave. That being said, I loved this game, and I didn't keep renting it, but I desperately wanted to find a copy of it. No one around me had a copy of it. None of my friends had it. But, and this is a weird one of my friends had a copy of the Nintendo Power Strategy Guide for it. And he just straight up gave it to me. He's like, hey, you like the game? Here you go. Awesome. So, I read the strategy guide front to back. And as far as the original Final Fantasy, I never found a copy of it until I was like maybe 15, I want to say. Finally, that used rental store that I bought a bunch of my NES games from, I bought their copy from there. And finally, I could spend the time I needed to with this game. And it took forever. And I had to use that strategy guide front to back too. But I managed to beat this game. And there's so much grinding. Like, I grinded all the time. But I really enjoyed it. And I had a buddy whose dad had copies of Final Fantasy 2 and 3 on the Super, and I rented them, or I didn't rent them, I'm sorry, I borrowed them, had a blast with them too, and that's more or less got me addicted to the franchise. We'll probably talk more about 2 and 3 and 7, maybe 8, in later episodes. But we're going to fast forward a bit now. I had been recently married, and my wife is pregnant, and we were in the hospital, and she had given birth to our son. And we were there for a few days, but I had gotten a Game Boy Advance at the time. It was the SP model, and whenever she was sleeping and I didn't have to take care of my son, I would play Final Fantasy Dawn of Souls on the Game Boy Advance, which had Final Fantasy 1 and 2 on it. And I love Dawn of Souls. Like, to me, it is like one of the biggest upgrades from the original you could do. Like, not nearly as much grinding. You could see the stat changes whenever you bought weapons, instead of having to like kind of buy it, try it, and see if it's better or not. They changed the magic system from a points over to like a magic point system instead of like a magic slot one. Like in the original, each spell level, you only had so many castings of that spell level, and then you're out. Whereas, like in Dragon Warrior, you had a magic point pool, and every spell you cast used points from that pool. Well, in Dawn of Souls, they changed that magic pool instead of every level, and it made it a lot better. But the best part were the bonus dungeons, where you could get like ridiculously overpowered equipment. The dungeons were huge, they could be confusing, but they also had boss monsters from like other Final Fantasy games in these new dungeons. It was such a blast. Well, I really enjoyed that one, and then re-got the game yet again for the Sony PSP. And to me, if you want to replay Final Fantasy this day, that is the version to get. The graphics are so crisp and so clean, and you get all of the bonus material. It's a blast. I also got the game on the Android, both versions, the original Android version, and then they pulled it and did the Pixel remaster. It's kind of like good and bad. It's still a good game, don't get me wrong. But the original version, they pulled out the bonus dungeons, which is kind of a bummer. And then they pulled out the bonus dungeons again for the Pixel remaster, which to me is a real shame because I loved that content. But the other issue I have with the Pixel remaster is that they got rid of the magic point system and went back to a limited number of castings per spell level. And to me, it just kind of makes the game drag a bit more. You still get a lot more experience in gold in the Pixel remaster than you do in the NES version. So, and it's a good version if you just want to go out, buy it, and play through the game. Now, if you're looking for that old school challenge, though, you gotta go back to the NES version. And everyone online will be like, no, don't do it. It's too ridiculous. And yeah, there's a ton of grinding. It is an old school turn-based role-playing game with that challenge built in. And it's still a blast, even with all its flaws. And there are some flaws in the NES version. There are a few spells that just straight up don't work. And if I remember right, elemental weapons that claim, oh, it does, like, if you have an ice sword, it deals extra damage to flame enemies. In the NES version, no, it don't. It just uses the standard stats. There is no bonus elemental damage because that system was broken. But that being said, if you're looking for a challenge, go for the NES version. But if you're looking for a version that just is a fun experience and it's a modern day retelling, I would say go for that PSP version. Yeah, I know the Pixel Remaster exists. And for convenience, like if you just want to go on Steam or your console and buy Final Fantasy 1, that's the way to go. If you don't mind getting the PSP and looking up the UMD on eBay or whatever for the original or emulator. I won't even play the pirate clip, but the PSP is probably the way to go. But that original game got me addicted to the whole franchise, and I could sit here and talk about that game for hours just because it has so many cool moments, like the class change where your all your guys get this massive upgrade and their sprites look a lot cooler on the screen. It's almost like they were kids that became adults. That's the best way I can put it. And every time you defeat a fiend and relight their elemental orb, like it feels like an accomplishment because there's 4 in the entire game. And to get that first one, you go through a lot. Like there are plenty of missions to do before you get that first orb lit. And then after you do, you kind of get the second one done really quick compared to the first one. But then you get a slowdown again with a few more side quests before you finally get to the third one. And then a few more side quests again before you get to the last one, before you figure out what's really going on. And long story short, you have to go back where you first started your adventure to finish it. And it was a really cool touch. Not gonna spoil the ending. The ending is kind of something you gotta like wrap your mind around a little bit. It's a unique ending. But what a fun game. And for its time, it was so ambitious. Like for a console RPG, and I get PC RPGs are a lot deeper because you had Ultima around this time, and like stuff like Ultima Quest of the Avatar and whatnot, really really deep. But just for a console-based RPG, wow! Like I had never played anything like this whenever I was a kid, and it got me addicted to the entire Final Fantasy franchise. But I'm gonna stop rambling for now. We're gonna play some music for the outro. Thank you for listening to my memories about Final Fantasy. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll join us again for the next I can talk, right? No outtakes, we're gonna keep this in. I hope you join me next week for the next episode of Afterglow.